Film is often used to entertain audiences, but today we're going to think of it in terms of what it can do to influence and change the world. In this case, we are looking at film specifically as it relates to social activism. To do so, we look at a particular case. This story has three main characters: John McHale, a professor working at Missouri University at the time, his former student and assistant Ryan Wiley, and most importantly, Joe Amrine, a Missouri man living on death row for 7 years for a prison murder he was found guilty of committing despite, as McHale says, there being neither witnesses nor evidence against him. John McHale expressed discomfort at the use of the death penalty, saying that the policy uses my tax dollars to kill people. His decision to study and support anti-death penalty advocates was based on his belief in free expression and a democracy. McHale's story went as such. Joe Amrine was on death row for a crime he did not commit. In 1979, he began serving a 7-year sentence for robbery and check forging, a crime to which he pled guilty. In 1985, while serving time in Jefferson City Correctional Center in Missouri, Amrine was implicated by 3 inmates in the murder of another prisoner, Gary Barber. Despite the testimony of a prison guard and 2 prisoners who identified someone else as having committed the crime, Amrine was tried and sentenced to death for that murder. Following the trial, the state's 3 major witnesses all said they lied in Amrine's trial and never actually saw Amrine fatally stab Barber. Ryan Wiley, ex-student of McHale's, had heard about Amrine's case from members of Missouri University's chapter of Amnesty International and thought it would make a good subject for a documentary. McHale agreed that they would produce the documentary together, with McHale directing it and Wiley serving as assistant director and editor. Wiley and McHale next met with Sean O'Brien, Amrine's attorney, and a small group of anti-death penalty advocates who were working on Amrine's behalf. O'Brien worked for the Public Interest Litigation Clinic, an organization that provided legal services to those accused of serious crimes but who lacked the resources to fund their defense. O'Brien gave McHale and Wiley videotaped depositions with 2 of the primary witnesses. Said McHale, "I was emotionally moved when I returned home and viewed these depositions. Consistent with the theory of advocacy communication on which I was working, video is more personal than written communication, and the nonverbal cues displayed by these 2 men were more emotionally compelling than the print communication I had read on the case." This viewing of the depositions cemented McHale's resolve that Amrine was innocent, and to consequently create the documentary arguing for his innocence. After some initial pre-production work, McHale and Wiley set about the interviews. They attempted to talk to 2 jurors for the original trial who had decided Amrine was guilty, but then subsequently changed their minds. The first juror became angry and refused to speak with the researchers. The second, Larry Hildebrand, agreed and, according to McHale, seemed relieved to get another opportunity to talk about the case. McHale said he sensed that the second juror felt guilty in how the jury deliberations had gone about and appreciated the opportunity to communicate his feelings in another venue. It's important to note that Wiley and McHale also included arguments against Amrine's innocence on the documentary, according to their ethics and desire for the whole truth to be told, not just their version of it. One of these contrary voices was Judge Thomas Brown, the original prosecutor in Amrine's murder trial. McHale asked Judge Brown if he would explain his position on camera in order to give audiences the full fleshed-out story. At one point, McHale and Wiley got a chance to interview Amrine himself, but unfortunately in their first attempt they found they could not get good footage, given that Amrine was behind glass, blocking the audio signal and causing issues with the video footage. Eventually, Sean O'Brien and McHale were able to meet with Amrine in a small room with a glass partition. There was still only a small slot in the partition to pass legal papers back and forth. McHale smashed a small lapel microphone in order to get it to fit through the slot and to get better audio of Amrine's responses. After the documentary was finished, McHale and Wiley set about showing it everywhere they could. McHale said that in addition to showing it at small theaters, they also had showings at small community centers, churches, and other alternative community spaces where these viewings were possible. In November 2002, the Missouri Supreme Court reconsidered its previous decision not to hear Amrine's case. This was an unprecedented move, as the Missouri Supreme Court had never before reviewed a death sentence with a last-minute habeas corpus petition. There is evidence of the impact that the video documentary had in saving Amrine's life. Amrine said that prior to the documentary, he didn't have a lot of support. He had a little, but not as much as after the documentary. He said, "It saved my life." McHale and Wiley were understandably encouraged and energized by using this process of documentary to promote social activism. They saw a rise in the surrounding community of Missouri, getting more involved in social changes, big and small. Membership in local nonprofits and organizations increased. McHale said he found that there is a ton of opportunity for social activism if people only did it. He concluded, "Our experiences from this video project showed that the media in the United States, although driven mostly by a priority of corporate profit, contains space for messages of social justice. Advocates, however, must possess the knowledge, skills, and gumption necessary to take advantage of these opportunities."